Not long ago, one story happened that convinced me, an ordinary schoolboy, to make sure that if the elders say not to do something, it means it cannot be done. They say not to go there, it means that they should still listen. Maybe the older ones know that and try to protect us from the consequences of our frivolous actions. This story is about this, about my youthful stupidity with my friends. What it consisted of will be described later in all the terrible details. I live outside a larger village. There are not many people living with us, but somehow we have 2 schools in the village. More precisely, it existed until one moment. I was lucky to study in the one in which the events took place not long ago, because of which this school itself was closed. Yes, one fine day, as I remember now, I was sitting in the classroom. As always, the teacher was boring. I fell asleep at the last desk, and the clever, excellent students who felt it disturbed my sleep. And now, at the end of the lesson, the teacher of literature burst into the classroom. This is a rather plump old woman who would already be retired, but she still valiantly drives her stupid heads in with new knowledge about writers who threw back their hooves several tens or even hundreds of years ago. She burst into the office. Well, as she burst in, she just abruptly opened the door and caught her breath. She ordered the teacher to go out into the corridor. The teacher left the classroom and slammed the already crumbling door. Well, we have the same as always. In the office, a brawl began. Pieces of paper were flying, obscene language. Peering into the class yearbook, there are not many people in our class. According to the yearbook, there are 17, and it's good when 13 to 14 get ready. Well, what do you want? A typical rural school, although in some there are generally 5 people in the class. We are even more or less like people. About 10 minutes later, the door to the office opened. The teacher entered the classroom. Everyone abruptly calmed down and pretended that nothing had happened.
So, children, we are now all going, quietly and calmly leaving the class.
What happened?
Was heard from the first desk.
What's the difference what happened? She said that you need to go out. That means you need to go out,
the teacher said, raising his voice.
Okay. Well,
he quieted down.
Everyone understands. We leave one by one. Wait for me in the corridor. Everyone is silent. Okay, let's go one by one.
Starting from their first desk, throwing briefcases over their shoulders, my classmates began to leave the office. I also collected all my belongings and waited for my turn, rejoicing in my mind. Something told me that there would be no more lessons and we would all be sent home. Everyone went out into the corridor and Victor Olegovich closed the door with a key.
So, now everything is quick. I repeat, we quickly leave the school through the back door. Everyone knows where that is?
Yes, everyone is singing,
one of the girls said. The teacher said all this as if frightened and tense. I was also not much alarmed then, and the joy that there would be no more lessons seemed to evaporate. We quickly walked to the back door, and passing into the main corridor, I stopped to tie my shoelace. I looked up from my sneakers. I noticed the police in the corridor, and the people in white coats. They were probably doctors. Yes, they were. When we left the school building, we all fled to our homes. I saw that there were several police cars at the main entrance, and one ambulance. Something happened, but what? I'm sure no good. Having disobeyed the teacher, I went to the corner of the school and looked out from behind him. Well, what would be better than to see the main entrance? After a couple of minutes, I was about to leave, but I saw that a stretcher was being carried out from school, and on it someone was lying covered with a cloth, or they were covering something else. I don't know. Then another ambulance drove up. Workers ran out of it and took another stretcher. 2 bodies were taken out of the school. I clearly saw red spots on that very fabric, even from such a decent distance. Seemingly, strange thoughts, some kind of inconvenience and fear entered my head. Combining the way the teacher brought it all to us and what I saw, I realized that someone was killed. But who and how? I did not know and did not even imagine. Moreover, next to the ambulances and the police were sobbing women, probably mothers, and the men who calmed them down. My cell phone call interrupted my observations. My dad called.
Hello? Son, what happened at school? Are you still there? No, Dad. We were taken out of school.
Lord, thank God. Come home, son. I was worried sick. What happened there?
I don't know, Dad. I saw something, but I'll tell you at home.
Okay, I'll see you soon.
I once again glanced at what was happening at the entrance to the school, and seeing nothing new, I turned around and went home. My house was not far from home, a 10-minute walk.
Well, how are you, son? I'm okay, Dad. What even happened? I saw that the police were standing there at the entrance to the school, and in the ambulance they seemed to take someone away on a stretcher.
Yes, your class Saka called me. Said something happened at school. It seems like someone was killed. She herself did not understand anything about what happened. Thought someone sneaked into the school and killed several people. They called the police, bitching and tearfully asked to take the children and not let them out. The village is not big. You never know what could happen.
And then I really felt uneasy. Father was noticeably nervous.
Listen, son, let's blow into the Konmatu. What they asked to do there, or do your own business as you want. Just stay at home. Don't go anywhere today.
Okay.
I muttered displeasedly and went into my room. As soon as I entered, I did not have time to close the door when a message came to the phone. Ira wrote. Sometimes I sit at a desk with her. In general, she's my good friend.
Hi. No news? What happened there? Yes. No. You don't know anything either?
I asked.
Nope. Mom says that they found 2 people in the toilet. There are no details about the dead. What are you planning today? Nothing. I'll sit and stick to the monitor. Dad asked me to stay at home. The same. Yes, this teacher whispered to them. My mother told me too.
And the correspondence ended there. A couple of tens of minutes later, I received a message again.
I don't know what to do at all. Boredom. There weren't too many lessons. Listen,
I suddenly wrote.
I was the last one to leave through the back door. Well, what do you want? Let's sneak into the school at night. Are you mad? They closed the school. My mother told me. For an indefinite period. Like they talked about transferring students to another school. Seriously? Well, like this? Or go to the city. The city is far away. Anyway, let's go at night?
I repeated.
Yeah. What are you doing? Are you afraid? But how would they seal everything there? There may be problems. You want to go in first or what? No, but it's kind of serious. Well, if you don't want to, then I'll go myself.
I wrote, knowing that she liked me and couldn't refuse to keep me company.
Well, I'll go with you.
She wrote in 3 minutes. I probably thought.
That's good. Let me leave the gate open in my yard at 12. And your dad? Yes, when he goes to sleep at night, I'll be alone.
She answered, and the correspondence was interrupted at this. I knew that there would be nothing special at school, but nevertheless I took a kitchen knife with me, wrapped it in newspaper, and put it in a backpack. At first it was not scary, but already when there was not much left, a strange triviality settled in me. On the street it was dark even if you gouge out your eyes. Only a small wall lamp illuminated my yard. My father was already on his way to work, but I stole 1 cigarette from him in the yard, sat smoking and waited for Ira. The sound of a message. I take out my phone.
I'm on my way. Well, I'm waiting for you. Uh-huh.
For some reason I didn't want to go there, and I already wanted to sleep. Every now and then I yawned every few seconds, but since I made some porridge myself, I had to go. In 10 minutes the gate opened and Ira entered the yard.
Hey. Hello. Are you ready? Uh-huh. Well, why are you so sad? You constantly find yourself getting on the 5th point, and I'm damn after you. Well, it's so cool. Let's just do it. We go there, we walk for 30 minutes, and then go home. Yes, well, I myself want to sleep already.
We left the yard and moved towards the already closed school. After today's events, this building looked somehow ominous. There was no light anywhere. Usually in one little room, he always shone where the watchman sat, but now darkness reigned in the building.
Well, what are we going?
I asked Ira.
Maybe we won't go? Come on already.
I walked towards the back door in the hope that it was not sealed. But no, There was a piece of paper glued on the door with the inscription sealed and several seals.
Well, you see, everything is sealed.
Ira said, sighing.
And now we will peel off a little, go in, and how to get out? We will fill it back. I think we will find glue somewhere inside.
I began to peel off the seal, and since it was glued to the iron door, it surprisingly very easily peeled off and did not even break anywhere. Voila! I whispered and opened the back door. Come on, I whispered and took Ira by the hand. We went to school. Well, but later, the devil only knows what began to happen. We walked quietly down the first corridor. It was necessary to get to the toilet of the second floor. It was there that those bodies were found. We walked quietly so that God forbid not to make any sound or rustle. The school was empty and every step we took did not echo along the corridor. We reached the steps to the second floor. Slowly we rise. Ira's hand trembled. I felt it. Her breathing quickened, and her heart was probably beating faster than usual. But why have I the same? Still, we went up to the second floor and went to the side of the toilet. So far, everything was calm. We opened the door and I took out the phone so that there was not much to highlight. And I was horrified. The entire toilet was covered in blood. Apparently they did not have time to wash it. Or rather, it was not. But the blood curdled. The walls were splattered. In the middle of it there were some red pieces lying around. I looked closely and realized that this was a hike of skin with fat and meat. I almost vomited, but the smell was still specific, from which every now and then vomiting would wake up inside me.
Let's get out of here.
Covering her face with her hand and almost crying, Ira spoke.
Let's go, rather. I don't want to stay here. Let's go,
I said in a trembling voice. My heart was pounding like mad, but it pounded even stronger when we just walked to the door from the toilet, as somewhere in the corridor we heard rapid footsteps, the echo of which reached us. I clearly heard it and could not confuse it with any sound. Someone was running in the corridor. But who? I didn't stick out much of the toilet. The corridor was empty and dark.
What was that?
I don't know.
Did you hear that too?
Well, of course I heard.
Ira spoke through her tears. In short, we leave, and quietly. What if there's someone there? What if it's that killer? The police were here all day. Who the fuck is the killer? And what would he be doing in the middle of the night here? And so it is. Everyone went. We left the toilet and went to the side. Going out, to be honest, I've already regretted 100 times that I was flooded here at all. The watchman can, so why should he run? He usually sits down in his little room, drinks tea and solves the puzzle. Well, he will go around school a couple of times, and then not always, but he will bypass and not run around. There was something wrong here, and then I wanted to leave this building as soon as possible and find myself at home. We go down to the first floor. There is also an emergency exit under the stairs, but I do not know if it is closed. Yes, it is also sealed. No need to go where you came from. Ira still held my hand very tightly. Her palms were already sweating and she was holding everything. We went down, and those awful things that I mentioned earlier began to happen. Before we had time to open the door, there was a shout in the corridor. Very loud and long. I did not understand by the voice who was shouting, a guy or a girl, but it was scary to madness. The cry lasted for a minute, and then came again, and in our direction were followed by rapid steps, still echoing along the corridor. I grabbed Ira tightly by the hand, and we ran to the end of the corridor, hoping to jump out of the window. Ira screamed with fear, betraying our location to the one that was approaching us. We ran to the window. I let go of Ira's hand and began to jerk the handle of the window to open it. But as for evil, there wasn't pounding. The window opened only for ventilation. There was no other way out. I had to run to the nearest emergency entrance, but I was afraid of the seal. You fool! Now the steps were getting louder and louder. Ira was already crying and tried to open the window. But at one moment, everything calmed down. I turned my head and behind Ira there it was. I'll call it differently. A tall, thin figure. In the dark, I could not see it, and the only thing that still managed to see it was that it was covered with some kind of darkness. Shivering, I completely turned to Ira. She looked at me in confusion and whispered, "What?" And literally after these words, a squeal. They grabbed her by the ruka and slowly began to turn it in the opposite direction. Ira twitched and screamed and tried to get rid of this grip, but apparently it was too strong. And at one point I heard a crunch, and Ira began to scream even stronger. That's when I pulled out the knife out of my backpack and tried to free her, but it didn't end well. I swung the knife, and the knife went through this creature as if I had just cut air. Ira no longer even screamed, but simply wheezed. Her hand was almost torn out. She just dangled like a snot, and only when she had already lost her fire, I heard another crunch and threw a glance at Ira. Her head was turned 180 degrees. The creature threw her reluctant body into the corner of the corridor. I rushed to run for nothing. I was running. My heart seemed to fall to the floor now. Goosebumps appeared all over my body, but I was running with my pangs of strength, and it was behind me. The steps were so heavy and fast, yet I ran into the main entrance, and that if I kicked my strength into it, breaking the lock, the door opened with a creak and I ran out of the school. I simply could not run further, so I stopped right at the entrance to catch my breath. And that's when I saw what it was. It stood in the doorway, and the light of the moon did not illuminate it much, and I was already used to the darkness. In the doorway stood a creature 2 or more meters tall. It was covered, as I said before, with a dark cloth under which one could see the mouth, eyes, and the absence of a nose. His arms hung down almost to the knee, and with insanely long fingers. Seeing him, the smarter began to lack air, but still, overpowering myself, I ran home, and it only closed the door to the school and disappeared from my field of vision. I ran home, changed clothes, washed myself a little, and then I ran to my father at work and told him everything. Ono asked for time off and we quickly drove home. From there, my father called the police. Father said that he had heard the sounds of them from the school, that there was someone there. He did not say anything about me. The police arrived, and as it turned out later, the seals were intact, the door was not knocked out, everything was left in the school itself. As I heard it, I almost collapsed to the ground. But how could that be? I knocked out the door and broke the seals. How did they recover? What was there? I did not understand anything at all about what was going on. Before my eyes is still that picture of how it breaks out Ira's hand. But that's not all. Probably 2 weeks have passed since those events. I went down to the garden, where we have a shed. My father asked me to bring him a bag of tools. So I went, and yes, I forgot to say, Ira was declared missing, but I found her. It was on that day in her garden that her body was already decomposing, and the stench was simply incredible. Flies flew around her, and she herself lay in the same position as that night when it threw her into the corridor with a twisted arm and a broken neck. My father and I buried her, saying that we found her in the forest when we went fishing. Yes, this is a very bad act, but after all, my father and I did not want everything to be blamed on me. After all, I did not kill her, and no one would have believed about the creature at school. When did it get there? I don't know. For all 9 classes that I studied there were no such incidents.